welcome to another episode of Top 5, and of course, as the title says, Rick, it's Top 5 Horror Villains.
Nice!
Oh, mate, like I'm someone who grew up loving horror films, getting right into it, spent a lot of my teen years devouring into that genre, so I'm really excited.
I know, you're I can't wait for your
really
list, mate, so yeah. I'm really excited as well, so...
You know, it was the funny thing, Rick, before we get started on this list, was how much, as more and more I researched, the more, without giving anything away, the more and more that there were ones that just shone above.
Yeah.
And I want to put in an honourable mention because they did make my top 5, but I would have argued this one home, but it didn't quite fit, and that would have been the shark from Jaws.
Yeah, so if we're looking at how we explain the rules...
Is Jaws a horror film?
So, yeah.
That would be the definitive question. Is Jaws a horror film? And I would say it very much is a horror film. But he's not in my top 5, so we won't get caught in the debate, Rick. Let's move on. I'm going to get you...
Well, yeah.
Well, okay.
You could...
Tell me...
Yeah, okay, yeah.
You could.
You could just...
I mean, like, I've got a, without giving... I've got a one in here that some people could argue that the movie was a thriller more than a
one
horror.
I reckon I've got one that's more than... Yeah,
but again, these are about horror movie
not.
villains that there's horrible things happening in the movie.
Well, that's right.
There's violence around
That's right.
it.
What do you classify? That's right.
He's terrified you,
Yeah.
blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah.
it's not a...
Yeah, but I'm going to get you to kick it off with number 5, so let's go. Number 5, Rick.
Number 5 for me, I'm going to go with Hannibal Lecter.
Hannibal Lecter. Now,
if you're going to talk about villains, obviously, we're going to talk about Hannibal Lecter, who is, for me, I thought it was like, he's very intelligent, he's charming, he's just that type of person that you really don't want to meet.
No.
For obvious reasons. So if you don't know who Hannibal Lecter is, he's a serial killer that eats his victims, which is pretty cool. I guess he was... The first cinematic experience for me was in 1986 for Manhunter. He was there in Manhunter with Brian Cox. That wasn't a really fantastic movie, but obviously what shined for me was Anthony Hopkins in Silence of the Lambs. And that's those scenes when he was eating and the way he was doing it and the way he brought this character out was very fearful for me in my experience, and I just enjoyed him as a character. So
he's a scary dude.
He is. So I'm going with Hannibal Lecter with my number 5, Jace.
Brilliant, Rick.
Starting it off.
All right, okay. Well, my number 5, I'm going back to 1974.
Oh,
all the way back to 74. And I'm talking Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Wow.
Now, my first experience with this was way too young. And, even at 5 or 6, I knew of the legend of Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
How it, at that time, had this reputation of being one of the most scariest films out there. And I remember my first introduction of seeing any vision of him was on home video, seeing a scene where he's actually running through the house chasing one of the lead girls. And obviously there's that iconic scene of him at the end just swinging that chainsaw around. Just the look of him. I mean, the fact that he's wearing a mask made of human flesh. And the character was based on Ed Gein, who was a famous serial killer in the 1950s. So they took elements from that, And even though he was the main antagonist throughout, not only that film, but all the dodgy sequels and remakes and stuff, he really took orders from the family. So even though he was the scariest guy out of them, he wasn't really the lead of the villain either, so he's an interesting choice. But he was terrifying. I mean, a guy with a chainsaw who wants to cut you up and eat you. I mean, wearing a mask of human flesh. I mean, it's pretty insane concept. And that kind of iconography, that kind of images as me as a child, I don't think I was until about 16 or 17 till I actually went back and watched the whole thing from the beginning to end because it affected me that much. And then was obviously quite surprised that it alluded to a lot, but didn't really show a lot.
Yeah.
That's what horror films sometimes generally do, especially in that period. So, Leatherface, definitely my number 5. Let's move you on to number 4, dude.
All right, number 4, I'm going back to 1987, Jace. I'm going back with Pinhead. Pinhead, who was in the Hellraiser movies. I first saw this, obviously... got it from the video store, actually. Which I think everyone knows, which was pretty cool. But seeing him, I had that, Pinhead had that when we first saw him, because he's noticeable. Everyone knows who Pinhead is. So you see a picture of him, you go, yeah, that's Pinhead. But he had that goth-looking look, and and he had his followers. He had his demons that were following him, and the whole concept of him, people trying to figure out that cube, and then him just going in and torturing him, which was awesome. Which I thought was great. Love the first, obviously, Hellraiser, but then a couple of the other ones weren't as good. But for me, it was the first Hellraiser for me in 1987, which I just absolutely adored.
Go.
So Pinhead, definitely my number 4 for me, Jace.
Right. Well, number 4 for me is going back only a couple of years to 2017.
Oh, okay.
And that is the modern iteration of Pennywise, the clown. Now, what can you say? These recent It films really I think, re-inspired the horror genre there for a little bit. It was great to see that kind of high-quality entertainment coming out in the horror genre. But really, it comes down to... Because there's been 2 Pennywise, both scary in their own way, but it's certainly the Skarsgård version is unbelievably terrifying. The way he does it, the way he... It's his physicality that really terrifies the hell out of you when he's drooling or he crosses his eyes.
It's his voice as well.
And it's his voice, and it's just so disturbing. And, Stephen King, wanted to come up with a villain when he came up writing the book It. He wanted to come up with something that he goes, I didn't know what to do a villain. So I went back and thought to myself, what scared me as a child? And obviously Clown. Clown terrified him, as does a lot of kids. So, and certainly just the quality of the film, his performance, the character in general, and the fact that you can make a movie when I'm in my early 40s and still genuinely scare me. I've got to give number 4 to Pennywise the Clown. Absolutely phenomenal, Rick. All right, moving on to...
I'm going to continue on with that, Jace.
You're going to go to number 3.
I'm going to continue on with that because Pennywise is on my list for number 3 as well, Jace. Pretty much, Jace, we summed it up. You had the 1990 version versus the 2017 version. Tim Curry, he had his... it wasn't a fantastic movie at the time, but the whole concept of a clown eating kids and...
It was still scary for its time.
Yeah, for sure. But then... They took it up a notch, obviously, in the 2017, and that first opening scene, it's a horrifying movie. It really is, because I'm not, from experience from me, I don't watch a lot of horror movies, so, when they first come out, I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of interested in it, and then it came on Netflix, I'm like, I've got to watch it, and fuck, did it just blow me away. It was just great. So, yeah, definitely check it out. Pennywise, number 3 for me, Jace.
That's number 3.
Awesome.
Well, my number 3 is my namesake. And now I'm talking Jason Voorhees.
Oh, look out, yep.
Now, this is actually a bit of a shock that I moved it down to number 3 internally, because my favourite slasher franchise growing up was the Friday the 13th. I was a real Friday the 13th guy, and I loved Jason, and I was obsessed with all the movies as they were coming out. But certainly, first seeing them, first being introduced... Like, as my fandom grew, it was more out of, I would enjoy it. I would see it almost like a comedy. But when I first saw it, I was terrified by it. And I was terrified by the Jason Voorhees from Part 2. And in Part 2, he wore a sack over his head. He didn't have the mask yet. Because he doesn't get the mask till number 3, the hockey mask. The iconic hockey mask. But just as this fact that it's this unstoppable force going through, it cannot be killed. I mean, they take it to... unbelievable, ridiculous levels in some of the sequels. But in that first 4 movies, and I would say the first 4 Friday the 13th films are really good horror films. But especially number 2, the way he dies, the way he hunts down his victims, just the music, just knowing that he's coming. That's his theme. And just, and the fact of the matter is, as an 11-year-old kid who didn't really understand sex or anything like that, you got to see some boobs and then
the campus
and the moral message meaning that if you have unmarital sex, you will get killed by Jason Voorhees. And but in all seriousness, they are scary films. They're well done. They don't hold up in today, but still at the time they were big films. They certainly had a really strong impact on me as a kid.
And that's what it's all about. That's
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
absolutely. So that was my number 3. Let's move you on to number 2.
Number 2, Jake. Obviously, if we're going to do a top 5 or a top 10, this guy's going to make the list. So he's made my number 2, and I'm talking about, obviously, Freddy Krueger.
Freddy Krueger!
Freddy Krueger for me was, we're going to make it. So 1984 is when Freddy debuted on Nightmare on Elm Street. And obviously, he was one of those characters for me, I guess, when you first see him. I was quite young when I saw it.
It's prime time,
and it did fucking freak me out. It did scare me because it is a scary movie, you know. And then the way he was talking, the way he looks, the way he was acting. But the thing that is fearful about Freddy is he can get you in his dreams and in real life as well. That's what makes Freddy scary. So I absolutely love this movie. And then obviously the series and other bits came over and the reboots and this and that. It wasn't as good, but yeah, definitely. Freddy Krueger for me was definitely the one.
Right, well, I'm going to move on to my number 2, which you've already talked about, which was your number 5.
My number 5
is our number 2 is Hannibal Lecter.
Wow,
Hannibal Lecter, and the reason why he's my number 2 is certainly Manhunter. I didn't actually see until I saw Silence of the Lambs. I went and saw Silence of the Lambs. Yeah. I didn't know anything about it. Yeah. Went to the cinema, saw it blind.
Oh wow,
completely.
That's probably the best way.
I knew it was kind of a serious movie. I didn't know who Anthony Hopkins was, but I knew who Jodie Foster was. But going in, what makes him ultimately terrifying, it's not just the fact that he will kill you and eat you, it's the psychological trauma that he does to his victims, bit by bit. It's a game. He's like hungering for his, the way him and Clarice talk to each other throughout that film and what he's capable of and how he escapes. It's just like every scene he was in, you really felt uncomfortable, nervous. I remember feeling nervous, like this motherfucker could kill me in any second, but it's a movie. So, for me, his impact on what I thought, and at that time too, I'm around 16, 17, and I'd seen a lot of horror films. By that point, I'm very well versed in horror film genre. So it took a lot to rattle me, and that film rattled me quite a lot. Really did. Left a strong impact. Certainly loved his performance so much, and so did the Academy. Obviously, he won a Best Oscar for it. What can I say for me? Hannibal Lecter, as I look past in all my years of existence on this planet, and I look at those horror movie villains, he definitely is up there as someone who made a strong impact. So that was my number 2, dude. Now you're
my number 1. Regan McNeil. Now everyone's probably thinking, who the fuck is Regan McNeil?
Alright.
So this movie impacted me really, really bad when I was younger. It was probably, and still today, it still holds as one of the most scariest movies I ever. I'm talking about The Exorcist. Now, when I saw this, I was really young. I was still in single digits, so I can't remember exactly what. Probably would have been maybe 5 or 6. But this movie really fucked me up. Basically, it's about a young girl played by Linda Blair who gets possessed by a demon, and her mother, thinks it's it's just her growing up, puberty, whatever. But this demon takes over, and then it just wreaks havoc. This movie just had everything for me. The way that Linda Blair looked, the way that she came across, the way she acted, her voice, her doing the head spinning and the vomiting and everything. It was just, and the music as well. The score in this was just great. At the end, obviously with the priest coming in and doing it all. This movie had everything for me, and it's still. I've only ever watched it twice. So I watched it once when I was young. I thought I could go back, but it still gets me to this day. So. Massive.
Great choice, Rick.
Yeah,
Great
for
choice.
me, it's just a personal thing for me. So, Regan McNeil in The Exorcist.
Excellent choice. And
1973.
And I tell you what, it didn't make my top 5, and that's only because I don't know why. She deserves... What you are saying is such a strong argument. That movie is still terrifying to this day.
Terrifying,
and a lot of it has to do with how it was shot and how it was directed to by William Friedkin, who done an excellent job, the pacing and the tone, the unpredictability of those scenes. It is an exceptional film, so that is a great choice.
It's a personal thing.
Didn't make my top 5, which
is... interesting. But, you know...
But you know what did make my number one?
What's your number one, Jace?
Well, you've already spoken about it, so I've got to deep into it. Freddy Krueger.
Nice, of course.
Freddy Krueger. And why he's my number one horror villain. And remember, these choices, guys, we're not trying to tell you what is.
No.
We're just telling you what impacted us.
Yeah.
Freddy Krueger was not only influential in the fact that the first Nightmare on Elm Street, as you rightfully stated, was a terrifying film in many ways. They played that straight for horror. The comedy element and everything what they ended up doing with Freddy Krueger happened in subsequent films, like the comedy, you know, in Prime Time Bitch and all that kind of stuff, to being extremely terrifying, that first film. But it also holds a special place in my heart because it was before this film, I was completely terrified of horror movies, beyond the joke. So when we talked about Leatherface, I'd only seen a bit of it, but that would emotionally scar me. I would be... You know, my elder brothers used to tease me they were going to get me to watch this horror film, and I'd be, young kid. But when I saw this, I don't know, it just connected me. I remember being terrified and glued to the screen, but there was a visceral reaction I got from it, and I actually fell in love with the genre. This movie alone, Nightmare on Elm Street, actually started that passion for horror movies off. Yeah. And it did really affect me, the fact that I watched it, and I remember feeling weird for the rest of the day. Like unsettled for the rest of the day. And I then went back and watched it again, and then watched it again, and watched it again. I then went to the cinemas. At age 11, they let me go and see a rated R Nightmare on Elm Street 2. Which is, got questionable motivations, that one. And then you've got all the other films. I mean, I like number 3, Dream Warriors. I thought that was good. Number 4 was, I thought, quality. Number 5 was crap. Number 6 was good. Like, they had some ups and downs, but nothing matches Freddy Krueger playing it straight for horror. You know, the scene where she's being thrown around the room. Yeah. And then they actually cut, and you can see her just writhing and playing with all that blood. You know, just the little things when he puts his hand up, cuts his fingers off and stuff. Just fucked up stuff. The fact that he was a child murderer. Yeah, that's right. And the mythos around him, how the whole town found him, and they decided to trap him and burn him alive in that urn. And it's just, I don't know, that film, that held it for me.
And that comes out of performance. You know,
well, Robert Englund. I mean, what could you say? I mean, the role that defined his career, without question, you know, and did so well. And he played it for a long time. He ended up playing the role for about 20 years in the end because he came back to do 2004's Freddy vs. Jason. Oh, Jesus. Which I tell you what, massive guilty pleasure for me. Yeah? Massive guilty pleasure. It's got both your... Yeah, why not? It's ridiculous. It's over the top. But it's why not? Yeah, let's put these two icons together and see what happens. And but fantastic. Yeah. That's our top 5, Rick.
It was a good top 5.
It was a tough one to do, Rick, because it was so many influences. Like when you said about Regan, I'm going, how did she not make my top 5?
But that's what our top 5s are. It's how these movies affected us.
And that's where I'm coming from with a lot of these top 5 shows, Rick. Is the emotional experience I have from these things. So,
and that's what
absolutely. So before we go, it's probably time. That has been our top 5, and of course we're going to want you to respond and interact and tell us your top 5. We love doing these shows. There's so much more to come. And I need to announce next fortnight show, the next show that we're doing, what that's going to be. Yeah. And that's going to be the top 5 buddy cop.
Ooh, nice.
Top 5 buddy cop.
There's a lot there.
There's a lot to work with, especially in the 80s and 90s.
There's a lot.
And in the recent years, there's been a few. So there is a lot to do.
Good choice.
And top 5 buddy films, buddy action films, but with a sense that as long as there's action in it, if it's primarily comedy and it's still got action, I'm still going for it. Yeah. You know, so, but at the end of the day, that'll be the next show. But until then, we want you to comment. We want you to talk about what you thought of the show and your input. Rick, how do they do this?
Guys, all you need to do is give us a comment down below for the video. Also, give us one of these a thumbs up. We'd really appreciate it. If you have subscribed to our channel, thank you so much. If you haven't, just hit that subscribe button. We'd really appreciate it. Hit the notification bell and just follow us all on our social media sites. Easy and simple as that, guys.
We'll see you soon.
See ya.